Speaksies.
So one of the many things I love about doing a podcast with you, Scott, is Halloween.
Yes.
Halloween has taken another turn in a good way for me during this time as an adult. And one of the things I look forward to doing every year with you is checking out what awful Halloween costumes are out there, what degenerate things people are doing.
Right.
And especially now in the COVID era, in these uncertain times we live in.
Right.
How are we going to still dress skanky as adults? As we've said before, Halloween really isn't for kids anymore.
No.
Kids can get candy. Kids can get stuff all the time. They don't need Halloween. But apparently as adults, or some people, somebody needs a chance to get their inner skank out. And again, hashtag diversity. Men can be skanky too, and we'll talk about that a little bit. So
I just want to say, before you even reveal what you found,
please,
if I do end up getting a costume, I might just go as Uncertain Times. It'd be like a newspaper, the Uncertain Times.
I like that.
So thank you for that. I'm going to keep that in the back of my head. So what did your research find? With your hard research into the sexy Halloween costumes?
Well, my hard research was going to yandy.com.
Yandy
with a Y on the front, and seeing what their best sellers were in the sexy Halloween costume area.
Yeah.
And I went to them, I believe last year I had found I think it was Your Sexy Neighbor, which was actually Sexy Mr. Rogers.
Right. With the hand puppets.
And there was also some sort of like Sexy Bob Ross. I forget what they called it.
That was a great moment in pod history, because I think I said something like, next thing you know, there will be a Sexy Bob Ross, and you turned your laptop around and there he was.
So the thing that's interested me this year is seems to be a higher level of sexy ninja related outfits. Including dragon ninja costume and also violent warfare ninja costume, which I don't. Violent warfare seems a bit redundant to me. But
violent warfare, right? Well, that's kind of weird, because so many things have happened this year, like Tiger King, and you know what it could be? The mask. Ninjas wear a mask.
Oh, I like that. You can be skanky,
right,
but still keep your not breathe in anything.
Cover your face and not much else.
As you take in diseases probably through other areas of your body. So I didn't see too many COVID things other than the ninja outfits. There's still some traditional things. The sexy nun, I do like the pun on this, bad habit nun costume.
I like that.
That's pretty funny. Sexy SWAT babe, which looks like an idea for a Cinemax movie that I would have made in 1994. And I think the only COVID-y one I saw was a hand sanitizer costume, which looks like a one-piece bathing suit with that a label on it that says hand sanitizer.
That could go wrong.
Yeah.
That could go wrong.
Or it could go very right for somebody.
That's true. Well, I didn't do the research on this, but it just so happened yesterday, a friend of mine was asking me about Halloween costumes and told me about one she saw. So this is not COVID. Well, maybe it is kind of COVID related.
Right.
But it really does sum up 2020 in a way. It's sort of I don't know. You tell me what this is, but it's a sexy mail-in ballot costume.
Sexy mail-in ballot.
Yes. And I saw this I thought it was Yandy, but no, it's boingboing.net.
Oh, okay.
So
that was the second place I look at for sexy Halloween costumes.
So you can show that you care about voting and look sexy at the same time. All right. Well, on that note, welcome to Origin of Speaksies. My name is Scott. I'm here with my friend Steve for this spooky Halloween. I was going to say spooktacular, but that's been used way too many times.
Yeah.
So, but it's our Halloween episode.
But maybe it can be used one more time.
Okay. It's our Speaksies Spooktacular. And Steve has been doing the research for this one. So, Steve, can you tell us about tonight's show?
Well, we're going to do some album titles or song titles that are inspired by the Bible. And accordingly, we found the perfect guest for this episode. Lead singer of Stryper, Michael Sweet, will be joining us later for an interview.
Yes.
Great interview. I was listening to last year's Halloween show and realized that he came up in the discussion.
Yes.
We planted the seed like a year ago, and it seemed to work out. So just to keep with planting seeds, I can't wait to next year's Halloween episode when Salma Hayek's going to join us. Just kind of throwing it out there, see what grows from that acorn. And also, Michael Sweet was also the first rock concert I ever saw.
So a little foreshadowing, we'll answer the question, did Michael Sweet remember Steve from that concert? And you may be surprised with the answer.
Yeah. And you may be surprised about what happened to a cherished van from an album cover. And we'll just leave that as something to look forward to.
It's good stuff. It's very good stuff.
So the first phrase I chose was the phrase, "No rest for the wicked."
Okay.
So that's something that I knew had some Bible roots. It was also an Ozzy Osbourne album that kind of stood out to me when I thought about, rock albums that would be related to the Bible.
I mean, what better than Ozzy Osbourne?
Yeah, because when you think of the Bible, Ozzy Osbourne comes up.
Well, you're pulling out songs from the Bible that maybe weren't used in Christian rock necessarily.
Yeah.
But
to give a little bit of a spoiler, anytime you can combine the Bible, Ozzy Osbourne, and Lil Orphan Annie.
Oh.
To me, that sounds like a recipe for spooktacular fun.
I'm sitting here trying to put all this together, but I'll let you put it together. So we're going to do also in this episode a segment called They Walk Among Us, and I was looking for conspiracy theories or urban legends, and I was like, oh, you know what I'll do? I'll do Ozzy Osbourne biting the head off of was it a bat, I think?
One of the things he bit the head off.
Right, because I didn't think that was real.
Yeah.
And I looked it up and it was like, oh no, this actually happened. So I guess I can't use this for urban legend. Like, that guy was pretty
most of the things about him you hear are true.
Yeah.
So for the history of this phrase, we're going to go to our friends at Phrase Finder. So the meaning of the phrase, "No rest for the wicked," the literal meaning is that the wicked will be tormented in hell. So that sounds like a really fun phrase to start, but it is our Halloween Spooktacular.
Yeah.
But I had to go to dictionary.com to get a better answer. Wanted to give Merriam-Webster a rest this week.
Yeah.
So it's a humorous phrase used for saying that you have a lot of work to do, which is punishment for bad things you have done. I've heard it used more when people are talking about, I'm really busy right now, no rest for the wicked. You have a lot of stuff going on.
This is why I love this show and why I love that we do this, because I never thought of it in either of those two ways. I thought of it in a third way, which was sort of like Rust. Rust never sleeps. So like no rest for the wicked just meant that like wicked people are going to always be doing wicked things, Yeah. So nothing about hell or about like, because you're wicked, you have work to do. I thought of it as it's sort of like a feature of the wicked person is that they're always working. Interesting.
So dictionary.com expands on it a little bit more, stating, it originated as a biblical quote, but no rest for the wicked is a proverb that means evildoers will face eternal punishment, popularly extended to mean that one's work never ceases. So getting to where it originated from and back to Phrase Finder, as we mentioned, the Bible, it derives from Isaiah 57, 20 and 21, and was first printed in English in Miles Coverdale's Bible from 1535. So we have, I can't remember when we've referenced Miles Coverdale.
We have, though, because I remember we made a Coverdale Page joke, I think.
Oh, you did.
Okay, it comes back up.
Solid. And again, I would love to think that maybe David Coverdale is somehow related to Miles Coverdale. So from 1535, in that crazy old English that looks like people did not know how to spell. But the wicked are like the raging sea that cannot rest, whose water foameth with the mire and gruel. And so ye wicked have no peace, saith my God. So to put that in terms that maybe people can understand that actually speak English.
You're going to conjure something here.
There's a chance. The ESV version, my preferred version, English Standard Version, the text is, but the wicked are like the tossing sea, for it cannot be quiet, and its waters toss up mire and dirt. There is no peace, says my God, for the wicked. So even though the first appearance was in 1500, in the 1930s, it really picked up in popularity. And one of the reasons was it was used as a title for Harold Gray's Lil Orphan Annie. One of the comic strips was entitled "No Rest for the Wicked."
Weird.
So Lil Orphan Annie has come up before. I prefer to say it that way. Pretend that she's a rapper from New Orleans. It's one of those comic strips that I'm aware of. I'm aware of the movie. But when I see it, it's not like one of those ones I go, oh, I really get why people liked this.
Right.
So I'm going to perform very briefly for you the comic strip entitled No Rest for the Wicked, which helped popularize this phrase. To set the scene, there's two girls with Little Orphan Annie. Oh, Annie, are you going over to Mabel's with us? Come on, Annie. We are all going to make fudge. Annie replies, gee, I wish I could, but I've got something I've just got to do. Sorry. Doggone Mr. Pinchpenny. He hasn't done a thing about that pipe organ he promised to buy the church. Not a thing. So before everyone goes to another podcast, I'm not going to read any more of it, but that apparently, the stylings of Harold Gray's Lil Orphan Annie, entitled No Rest for the Wicked, made that phrase very popular. So as the strip goes on, Lil Orphan Annie wants to go have fun, go make fudge with her friend Mabel, but she can't because she's got to do a lot of work, including interact with somebody by the name of Mr. Pinchpenny.
I was going to say, Mr. Pinchpenny, what a name.
So even though Lil Orphan Annie made this popular, for me, the phrase when I hear that, I always think of an Ozzy Osbourne album from 1988, No Rest for the Wicked. So No Rest for the Wicked was a solo album by Ozzy Osbourne. It was the first Ozzy Osbourne album that Zakk Wylde joined, one of his many guitar players. Ozzy Osbourne has done a pretty good job of always having a good lead guitarist with him, whether it's Randy Rhoads or Jake Ely or Brad Gillis from Night Ranger briefly. Zakk Wylde was one I think worked with him probably longer than most people did. And one of the things that was interesting about, or always stood about this album was one of its, I think it was the first single called Miracle Man. So the song Miracle Man always stood out to me because the video and the song were pretty much pointed at disgraced televangelist Jimmy Swaggart.
Oh, so when you said Miracle Man, I hadn't heard the song, but there was something, and I was thinking, it kind of might tie back to the Bible like you were talking about. Jimmy Swaggart. Yeah.
So in the 1980s, when Ozzy Osbourne wasn't doing cocaine or urinating on the Alamo or biting the heads off bats or also biting the heads off doves.
That's right. He did both.
Yeah. Hashtag diversity. Yeah. He, played up the devil thing, which is a pretty 80s kind of rock and roll trope.
Right.
Of, let's have some upside down crosses. Let's, sing songs about hell or the devil or whatever.
Right.
One album title that I remember from Ozzy was called Speak of the Devil. It was a live album cover. I remember I was young and it scared the crap out of me.
Yeah, I was going to say, I was scared of...
He's shirtless with his mouth open and his mouth is full of some sort of like blood vomit. So
yeah, that's scary.
Yeah. So, don't want to really take Jimmy Swaggart's side in anything. But also at the same time, maybe, don't have a bunch of upside down crosses or, your mouth, bloody vomit emerging from your mouth and go, I don't understand. How dare you be offended by me? So Jimmy Swaggart was a televangelist that most people, I think, remember for when he got caught with a hooker. After he had taken
Jessica Hahn?
No, that was Jim Baker.
Oh, that's Jim Baker.
I think Jimmy Swaggart didn't do a very good job of having a memorable hooker.
No.
But he was memorable for going after different rock artists, including Ozzy Osbourne. So Ozzy Osbourne took some good shots at Jimmy Swaggart afterwards, mocking him. And I think everyone remembers when he was caught with a hooker, there was a very kind of famous clip of him crying and, begging for forgiveness.
Yeah.
But what I think a lot of people forget about is the second hooker that Jimmy Swaggart was caught with a few years later.
That's right.
So his
was that Jessica Hahn?
No,
that was still.
He never really seemed to get in that major league.
No,
I don't remember any of his hookers doing much afterwards. But what I will give Jimmy Swaggart credit for is after he was caught with the second hooker, he decided he took a little bit more of an aggressive stance in his response.
Okay.
So after his first hooker, he did the crying response and was thrown out of his, went under some sort of program. His denomination came in and managed him and rehabbed him and ran his church for a little bit.
Yeah.
But after the second one, he was a little bit more defiant. And I found an article from the Seattle Times after the second hooker where someone asked him about that. And he said in front of his congregation, "The Lord told me it's flat, none of your business."
You really?
Yeah.
I don't remember that one.
So
he should have just gone with, I have sinned against you.
Yeah.
Again.
Yeah. So I'll give him a little credit for that. But another target of Jimmy Swaggart, and there's a reason why I'm spending so much time on him, was a rock band by the name of Stryper.
Really?
Yes.
He didn't like Stryper either?
He did not. So Jimmy Swaggart actually devoted an entire chapter to Stryper in a manifesto, as I've seen it described, in 1987, co-written with somebody else, named Religious Rock and Roll, a Wolf in Sheep's Clothing.
I was about to say, I remember that, Wolf in Sheep's Clothing.
Yeah. So to give you an idea of... So I actually found a facsimile of this on the internet. I wasn't going to buy it, but I found someone who had actually taken the book and transcribed it to a blog. So I found some of the highlights describing...
Oh, I can't wait.
Stryper. So here's one shocking quote. "At one point, Michael Sweet dances over to the left side of the stage and plays an imaginary guitar across the genital area of his body while strutting and swinging his hips to the music beat."
Oh, well, that's a hard pass for me.
Well,
air guitar near the crotch area.
So I'm not a trained musician,
right,
but I'm fairly certain that when you put a guitar on,
yeah,
it ends up in the genital area.
It would have been worse if he was like strumming near the nipple area.
Yeah,
you say, well, that's not how you do an air guitar.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
gosh.
if he does, it's flat, none of your business. I think I'm going to kind of take that and start running with it. It is actually pretty good. Mm-hmm. So something that I found ironic was, as you know, Stryper is a Christian heavy metal band. Michael Sweet is a professed Christian, still is. And the way he became a Christian was through watching a television program hosted by Jimmy Swaggart.
You are kidding. I didn't know that.
I am not kidding. So to quote from an article in 2009 from the Village Voice, "My brother and I started watching him on TV when we were kids, and that led to our whole family going to church and deciding to live a life for God," says Michael.
Wow.
"And then he wound up being the one that led the troops and really standing up against us, holding up our records on television and saying these guys are of the devil." So, small ironic world that we live in sometimes.
Yeah.
Something that also was very interesting in this was I found a video of Stryper performing in the mid-'80s at the Christian Music Awards. Mm-hmm. Maybe it was called the Dove Awards. Mm-hmm. And to see them do a full 1980s performance in front of a very conservative crowd,
right?
That you could tell not everyone had won over. But it was very interesting to see Pat Boone go out of his way to stick his neck out for people. It was just I went down a very interesting rabbit hole of Caucasian people. But
Annie, Pat Boone,
yeah,
I do remember hearing. I don't remember if it was directly towards Stryper, but I just remember Pat Boone being pretty open to different types of music.
Yeah.
So it reminds me of this whole thing about Jimmy Swaggart going after Stryper. Last year's Halloween episode, we talked a little bit about Petra, and one of the phrases was witch hunt. And it does, and the point of this, Petra has a song called Witch Hunt, which is kind of about this, which is like, hey, you're supposed to be doing the preaching and worrying about winning souls and things, and instead you're going after rock bands. So this is a prime example of that.
If you're really looking for something to do, Religious Rock and Roll, a Wolf in Sheep's Clothing is a very interesting read of... as the sections on Stryper take turns to basically call them out for being commented by real music magazines as being good musicians.
Well, right.
And then throwing that against them and just doing things like, playing an imaginary guitar across his genital area, taking obvious things that are fine and finding some so weird, sinister act to them.
I remember as a kid that Petra, to keep bringing it to Petra, but I remember my mom I had a couple Petra tapes, which was like, and she saw that they had won a Grammy, and that was like a bad thing because it was a Grammy, that means they must be a secular artist. And I had to, no, it's look at the lyrics, Well, that's incredible. Yeah. And it reminds me on a broader scale, not just directed at Stryper, but also the Hell's Bells documentary, which I believe we both watched back in the day. And that would be a little extra credit if you want to, after this episode, try to find that thing on YouTube, because that scared the bejesus out of me when I was a kid, because it was about Stryper. I don't know if they were in it, but definitely Ozzy Osbourne was in it.
Oh yeah,
and Wasp and Judas Priest and they weren't messing around on the evils of heavy metal
or wickedness. So to kind of tie it all together, no rest for the wicked comes from Isaiah. It originally meant how the evil would pay the price for eternity in hell. Thanks to Lil Orphan Annie not being able to make fudge with her friend Mabel, it became in the popular lexicon. It was also a pretty decent mid-'80s Ozzy Osbourne album that attacked Jimmy Swaggart, who was very defiant about his second hooker. And again, without him, we might not be talking later this episode with Michael Sweet, though.
That's true. So that's the silver lining.
Yeah. Something good came out of that hooker other than a good quote.
All right, so we're going to move on to a new segment called They Walk Among Us. Conspiracy theories.
Conspiracy theories.
There's a secret society of the 5 wealthiest people in the world, known as the Pentaveret.
We know differently, and here's David Stern with the announcement.
First pick, select Patrick Ewing.
Who run everything in the world.
I don't like them putting chemicals in the water that turn the friggin' frogs gay.
The Queen, the Vatican, the Gettys, the Rothschilds, and Colonel Sanders before he went tits up.
They walk among us.
For tonight's Halloween-themed They Walk Among Us episode, I'm going to start with a true story which begins on a rainy Halloween night in 1974. On that rainy night in the suburbs of Deer Park, Texas, children were out knocking on doors in the search of Halloween candy. Among the trick-or-treaters was a man named Ronald O'Brien. He and his 2 children, 8-year-old Timothy and 5-year-old Elizabeth, were out with a neighbor and his son when they reached a dark house with no lights on. The kids wanted to try for candy anyway, so they knocked on the door and waited in the rain on the dark porch. After a couple of minutes of standing there, they gave up and decided to run off to the next house. According to Ronald O'Brien, it was at this point, after the rest had moved along, that the door to the dark house creaked open, and a person whose face he couldn't make out in the shadows gave him a handful of pixie sticks for the children. O'Brien took the candy and caught up with the kids, giving them the good news, and each of them a pixie stick. That night, when it was time for bed, Ronald O'Brien allowed his kids to have one piece of candy before they went to sleep. 8-year-old Timothy chose the pixie stick, but soon found that the powdered candy was stuck in the tube. With the help of his father, Timothy was able to dislodge the powder and get some into his mouth. He immediately complained about a bitter taste. Ronald gave him some Kool-Aid to wash it down. Less than an hour later, Timothy was dead. So media reports of this incident helped fuel the fear of what has been termed Halloween sadism. And for kids like us growing up in the 80s and 90s, we got the constant warnings of razor blades in apples or poison or drugs and candy. Just the idea that there are people out there who would do something like this really freaks out parents, and rightly so. I definitely remember hearing warnings from my parents and church as well. In fact, partially because of this whole idea, I never went trick-or-treating as a kid. Steve, what about you? Do you remember the warnings growing up of the razor blades and the candy, things like that?
Oh, yeah. That was something we were on the lookout for, and I expected it. Like, I almost was waiting for my neighbors who trick-or-treated, because I wouldn't do that. If anyone listened to last year's episode, they know that I was under the influence of a kale-fueled witch coven master who turned out to be a big liar.
Yeah.
About most things. He was right about kale, but he lied about other things. So I thought Halloween was the devil's night for superpowers,
right,
and also putting razor blades into candy, and killing children.
Yeah, so there are a lot of factors that led to kids like us being scared of this and parents being scared of it even more so than the kids, and we'll talk about this. So now I'm going to tell you about a guy named Joel Best. He's a University of Delaware sociology and criminal justice professor, And he's researched reports of Halloween candy tampering in the U.S. going all the way back to the 1950s.
Oh.
And on his website, which is joelbest.net, he talks about all the deaths attributed to Halloween sadism.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm going to run through those real quick, and let's try to see if we can keep account of all the deaths that have happened. So,
okay.
Kevin Todson, Detroit, 1970. A 5-year-old Kevin died after eating heroin, supposedly hidden in his Halloween candy. Less heavily publicized was the follow-up story that Kevin had found the heroin in a relative's home. Patrick Wiederhold, Flint, Michigan, 1978. 2-year-old Patrick died after eating Halloween treats. However, tests of the tissue samples did not find traces of drugs or poison, and it was concluded that his death came from natural causes. Ariel Katz, Santa Monica, 1990. 7-year-old Ariel collapsed while trick-or-treating and died. Her parents told the authorities that she had heart problems, but the initial press reports blamed Halloween sadism. The coroner eventually attributed the death to an enlarged heart. And then an anonymous child in Vancouver, British Columbia, died after eating Halloween candy, leading police to advise parents to throw out all Halloween treats. However, pathology tests showed no evidence of poisoning, and the autopsy showed she died of a streptococcus infection. So if you're counting, that's 0 so far. But what about the death of 8-year-old Timothy O'Brien by the pixie stick from the shadowy figure which we started the segment with? Turns out that the real villain here was his father. His father had taken out a life insurance policy on his son. And so Ronald O'Brien, this guy, they later got named the Candyman, was tried, convicted, and executed for the murder of his son. So who do we blame about all of the hysteria, to throw back to a couple episodes ago? Nobody's died, and we really don't have any stories about people getting sick from this Halloween sadism. Certainly nobody has died. Where did the fear and warnings come from? Well, you mentioned the name that shall not be said of the you have to listen to last. I don't even know if we said his name last time. I think we did.
We just didn't put it in the titles.
Yeah, we don't want him getting any more
attention than he gets. Yeah,
but there was some of the satanic panic stuff going on. But as usual, we can blame Dear Abby and her sister Ann Landers.
Man.
So I found this on the Smithsonian Magazine Online. On October 31st, 1983, advised columnist Dear Abby published a Halloween-themed column titled, quote, A Night of Treats, Not Tricks. In the column, she just reminded readers that, among other things, somebody's child will become violently ill or die after eating poison candy or an apple containing a razor blade. 12 years later, Ann Landers, who actually is Dear Abby's sister, which I didn't know until today, wrote a Halloween article called Twisted Minds Make Halloween a Dangerous Time, echoing the same concern. And she said in recent years, there have been reports of people with twisted minds putting razor blades and poison in taffy apples and Halloween candy. It is no longer safe to let your child eat treats that come from strangers. I got to tell you, man.
Yeah.
Every adult I knew, especially moms, was reading one of those too.
Oh, yeah. It was out there. It was not a urban legend. It was almost like presented as fact that you were going to encounter candy that would have razor blades or drugs or...
Yeah, and to bolster your point, in 1985, the hysteria had become so widespread that a poll from ABC News, Washington Post found that 60% of parents feared that their children would be injured or killed because of Halloween candy sabotage. So you've mentioned a couple times how it was just kind of like a fact, and I kind of felt that way too, which was one reason I was like, man, I'm glad I'm not out there. So it's not just the media that spread this. In fact, there aren't as many stories as you would think from that time. Humans do have a natural instinct to distrust food given to us by strangers. In a book by Samira Kawash called Candy, A Century of Panic and Pleasure, she explains that claims that candy was poisoned or adulterated gained general credence during the Industrial Revolution when food production moved out of the home or local area where it was made in familiar ways by known and trusted people to strangers using unknown ingredients and unfamiliar machines and processes. There were even doctors back then who publicly claimed that they were treating children poisoned by candy every day. So if a child was becoming ill and had eaten candy, the candy was widely assumed to be the cause. However, no cases of illness or death were ever substantiated. I still have coworkers that refuse to eat at a potluck because they don't want to eat food that was made not in front of them, or won't even eat like a food out to eat. So, I mean, this.
Well, I don't blame people for that, because that's probably pretty smart. We've all worked in restaurants, and the fact that any of us eat any other food that we didn't make ourselves is kind of strange. Right. However, the idea of somebody, a small group of people conspiring to put razor blades in candy. Right. And, again, I don't think anyone, if they were smart, they wouldn't put it in apples, because who's going to eat fruit?
That's a good point.
At least I would. Maybe that's one of the reasons I'm fairly stay away from fruit. Could be because of this. So maybe there have been some benefit. And every, the glass can be half full sometimes.
Yeah. I was going to say, every year we have a revelation. Last year, during the show, you discovered a deep-seated issue with kale because of Satan. And now you're realizing your issue with just fruit in general could have to do with Halloween as well. So another breakthrough, I'd say. Yeah. So to wrap this up, look, there are stories from time to time about tampered food. They're really gross. I'm not going to even talk about them, but they happen. And you've probably heard them. So it happens. The deal is, though, that like you said, Steve, there's not a there's no concentrated group of Halloween sadists that are out there giving your kids candy, tainted candy. Doesn't hold up to any scrutiny. Mm-hmm. So to end on a positive note, according to Joel Best, your kid is much more likely to be hit by a car while trick-or-treating in the street.
They walk among us.
So that was, Scott, thank you for sharing that. That was a little dark, but it is a Halloween episode. But I do want to kind of lighten the mood a little bit.
Sure.
So I've spent some more time checking out the costumes that are available at yandy.com. Which I've now found out is not a Halloween site, but your number one site for sexy apparel. So kind of walked into that one and didn't mean to, but you know what? It's Halloween. Things
That's right.
are, different things happen.
Different things are acceptable.
One of the things that's been very popular lately, I take that back. One thing that hasn't been popular lately to some groups of people are the police. There's a lot of movements out there to defund the police. But I tell you, based on the costumes I see at yandy.com, that hasn't hit there yet.
Oh, okay.
So let me give you a couple costumes that you could buy for your police-themed Halloween costume.
Please, I'm very interested in backing the blue this year. Well, Halloween style.
Well, one way to do that is to buy the outfit called Officer Pat You Down. Another one is Dirty Cop Officer Ain't Need a Bribe.
Oh my.
Yeah. So maybe, they're out there.
Well, that's a short story.
That is. There's a whole thing. There's Perverse Lieutenant costume.
Oh, I like that.
But #diversity, plus size Perverse Lieutenant costume.
Hey, do me a favor. Is that for males or just females?
There's we don't judge.
Okay, because I was going to say, send me that link.
Yeah, and if you're not sure what the vibe is they're putting out, the last one I'll leave you with is Arrested and Aroused is a police outfit. That's quite an outfit. I'll say. And by outfit I mean not much.
Yeah.
At all. So I hope if anyone that uses yandy.com, hopefully they won't defund the police, and based on these outfits, hopefully they won't defund Planned Parenthood either. So for my last phrase, I originally wanted to do all album titles inspired by the Bible, but in this case I decided to do a song title. And the thing that pushed me over the top was the song title comes from an album called Scary Monsters and Super Creeps.
Oh, perfect for Halloween.
Yeah. So the album is by David Bowie, and the song we're going to discuss is Ashes to Ashes.
Ashes to Ashes.
So
Dust to Dust.
Yep. So this was one that, as you seem to know, everyone seems to know, Ashes to Ashes, Dust to Dust. I was surprised when I did a little bit of research. I thought this was actually directly from the Bible, and it's not. It's inspired by it, but the text comes from the English burial service.
Okay.
So we're going to talk
I would have always thought, because that's something that gets read at funerals. I thought it was a scripture, yeah.
So again, going to our friends at Phrase Finder, origin of the phrase, ashes to ashes, dust to dust. It derives from the English burial service. The text of that service is adapted from a biblical text, Genesis 3:19. and that is from the King James Version. In the sweat of thy face shalt thou eat bread, till thou return unto the ground. For out of it wast thou taken, for dust thou art, and until dust shalt thou return.
Mm-hmm.
So the English burial service that I'm mentioning comes from the Book of Common Prayer. It originated in the 1662 version of this. The Book of Common Prayer is a liturgical book used by churches of the Anglican Communion. So the Church of England is also called the Anglican Church. Their Book of Common Prayer, is very famous, has been adopted by other Protestant denominations, and is responsible for that phrase getting into the lexicon. And basically meaning you start out small, you're going to end small, talking about the cycle of life and mortality, and how we're all going to end up back where we came.
The dust to dust, I mean, according to the Bible, we were formed from clay.
Yeah, formed from dust, and that's how we're going to end up.
Yeah, and the ashes, I don't know how that kind of plays in, but...
maybe Ring Around the Rosie. Comes back
there
around.
You go. There
Who
you
knows?
Go.
Well, maybe we'll tie in a past episode.
Maybe
with that.
Little Orphan Annie has something to do with this.
Never know. Never know what happened to Mabel after she made that fudge. Maybe Mike Warnke and his coven of witches.
Mike Warnke liked fudge.
He looks like he really likes fudge. So,
we said his name. Oh well,
it's okay.
He'll be all right.
So the Book of Common Prayer is responsible for some other phrases I'll tell you about in a few minutes, but it also is indirectly responsible for the song Ashes to Ashes by David Bowie. So a little bit of background on the album that it came from, Scary Monsters and Super Creeps, mostly referred to just as Scary Monsters. Mm-hmm. It was one of the last albums he did before he reinvented himself. So during the 1970s, David Bowie was famous as being a very provocative and visual rock star with different personas and embracing different types of music, which he was very critically praised for, but financially wasn't the best thing for him. He wasn't extremely successful. He wasn't very accessible, and also I think he had some managers that were not treating him properly too. Yeah. So this album is kind of revered among David Bowie fans. You often will hear when he had something new come out, it would be referred to as, his best album since Scary Monsters.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah. And one of my favorite things about David Bowie is after this album, he disappeared for a few years, reemerged with bleach blonde hair and a tan, and basically was no longer sexually experimentative David Bowie, but, very straight.
Right.
David Bowie, and he introduced himself at a press conference by saying, "I'm David Bowie. Who the hell are you?"
Oh,
which is
so good.
Not as good as saying, "The Lord told me it's none of your business." But
I was thinking that.
But it's up there.
It's flat
pretty
none
good.
of your business. Yeah.
So the song "Ashes to Ashes" on the album, in case you can't tell, I'm a pretty big David Bowie fan. It's a very okay song. It's not like his best song. It's not his worst song. One of the things that I think is that stands out is it was also, for at one point, the music video that was directed for it was known for a long time as the most expensive music video ever made. And even if you've never heard the song, you might know the imagery from it. It has David Bowie dressed as a clown character named Pierrot, an Italian clown, kind of a standard stock look of a clown that if you saw that, you would recognize the look of it.
It sounds very scary.
Yeah. Not as scary, even though it is the Halloween episode, and it's not as scary as some of the clown outfits that are out there.
Yeah.
And speaking of clown outfits, on Yandy.com, some of their clown outfits include creepy clown costume, which I believe is an homage to Stephen King's It, except with instead of dying by being eaten by a spider, you would probably have a disease that'll rot your genitals. Also, let's play a game costume, which I have... Well, I have an idea of what game you would be playing, but maybe not like the sort of clown activity that David Bowie as Pierrot would do. So David Bowie on this song too is kind of a retrospective song that I think he knew what he was going to do next. Makes references to Major Tom, the character introduced in the song Space Oddity from 1969, and kind of looks back at his decade. Which, to give a shout, it's very interesting to see artists from the 70s, how productive they were.
Yeah.
That, nowadays, if someone makes an album, it's, you're going to wait 3 to 4 years in between albums.
Right.
Where he was putting out albums every year and having, within a decade reinvented himself 4 times.
Right.
But it's a kind of a backward looking album. And I think also with the theme of ashes to ashes, dust to dust, you're going to start as dust. Mm-hmm. You're going to end as dust. I think him kind of understanding maybe his mortality as a person, but also as a musician too, that there's a chance that doesn't, your career, you might be a star now. You might not always be a star.
Yeah. And then I guess ironically, he's maybe the one artist that never became not relevant.
Yeah.
Right? Until the day he died. Because
I'd agree with that.
I can't think of another artist.
No. Had some down times, I'd say, in the late 80s, but who among us?
True.
Just as for any Bowie fans out there, Scary Monster is a pretty good album. A little bit different, not very classic rock, and it's almost like I think he wanted to get some of his last weirdness out of him before he reinvented himself, knowing that was coming in a few years. So get a chance to listen to it. I'd say a highlight is a song called Teenage Wildlife that features really great guitar work from Robert Fripp. You might know him from King Crimson, or he actually played lead guitar on the David Bowie song Heroes.
Okay.
So kind of a different guitar player in a good way. Great album, and Ashes to Ashes, pretty good song. So we've talked about the influence that David Bowie's had. Let's talk some more about the influence that the Book of Common Prayer has had.
Yeah.
So going to Wikipedia, here's some phrases that they say are well-known phrases from the Book of Common Prayer. And you tell me, Scott, how many of these are familiar to you?
Sure.
So one is, speak now or forever hold your peace.
Absolutely. From weddings.
From the marriage liturgy.
Mm-hmm.
To death do us part.
Mm-hmm.
Also from the marriage liturgy. Some other phrases they say that are very famous are read, mark, learn, and inwardly digest.
Yeah, I haven't heard that one.
Can't say I've heard that one.
Maybe we should try to get that one going, but maybe not. That's not the
Maybe
best.
not. All sorts and conditions of men.
Negative. Have not heard that one.
I've not heard that one. So flesh, so clean loungewear. What? Nope, sorry. Not Book of Common Prayer. Wrong window. I went back to Yandy.
Oh, okay. I thought you went to, that was like an Outcast album or something.
No. And then finally, Evil Liver.
Oh, yeah. Evil Liver. No, I haven't heard that one.
I haven't heard that one either. So Book of Common Prayer, still doing a pretty good job, I'd say.
Yeah, I'd say they got some Hall of Famers there, and then a bunch of ones we never heard of.
Yeah. Just like a good album, you're going to have some big songs and then some album fillers.
Yeah.
So we'll give them credit for that. So,
well, I like learning about the fact that Ashes to Ashes doesn't come from the Bible, because there are so many of those sayings that people think come from the Bible,
right?
And I would have thought that. So now this is on the list. Like, what are the other? Like, God helps those who help themselves. Like, that's not from the Bible. There are a bunch of these. So
ain't nothing going on but the rent. I was surprised that wasn't from Ezekiel. I always thought Michael Sweet straightened me out on that. And you'll actually hear that in our interview with him.
Yeah.
And finally, to button up this segment, Yandy.com actually does have a Pierrot costume. So if you're feeling inspired by this episode to get a sexy Italian clown outfit, Yandy.com is the place to go.
All right, Steve, thank you so much. That was great. And now it's time for our interview with Michael Sweet.
In an industry that often defines rebellion as a large group of people dressing and behaving exactly the same, our guest has gone against the grain by simply playing the music he wanted to play with the message that he wanted to sing. His band Stryper has sold over 10 million records, and their newest album, Even the Devil Believes, is available for purchase or download everywhere. And most importantly for me personally, Stryper on their In God We Trust tour was my first rock concert ever in 1989. So I'm very happy and honored to welcome today our guest, Michael Sweet of Stryper. Michael,
Thank you, guys. Pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me.
So in 1989, I'm sure you remember me sitting in the back of the Hampton Coliseum. So it's good for us to catch up again.
I do remember. Gosh, you were wearing a white T-shirt and red pants and a bandana, a red bandana.
How did you guess? I knew I was planning for this moment 30 years ago. It's finally coming to. So, Michael, you and Stryper have been more productive artists during the COVID period. Tell us about what you guys have been up to.
Well, our schedules kind of aligned with COVID, if that makes any sense. We had everything on the books pre-COVID. So we were scheduled to start on a new album. I started writing in December. We started rehearsing in January. That's when we started hearing about what was going on in China. And then as we continued to record and advance in terms of putting the album together, it got worse and worse. We went to Mexico. When we got back from Mexico into February, we were in lockdown mode, and like the rest of the world. So it was pretty much life as usual for us. When we went into lockdown mode here at my house, and we were supposed to stay quarantined for a few weeks, that was nothing new to me. I just went down in my basement studio and started recording vocals for the new album. So it just really kind of lined up and worked out. And it was nothing out of the ordinary for me or for the band. The only thing that might have been is when it came time to shoot the videos for the album. We did that just a few months ago, if that. And the guys flew out here, and we again quarantined for a few weeks. We all got tested, did all the requirements because we want to be smart. But yet at the same time, life goes on. You can't. The mentality of some people is, you have to be smart, but they take it so far that they never leave their homes, and life is not continuing. And we're a band. We still are going to figure out ways to survive and rise above and stay active and all that good stuff. So, we're not being irresponsible. We're just doing our job.
Yeah.
So the theme of the episode that we're interviewing for is album titles with titles drawn from the Bible. So we thought you would be a great guest for us on that. Where do you draw inspiration for your music? And are there any current artists that you really enjoy?
Yeah, I draw a lot of inspiration. Obviously, everybody knows this, I hope, from the Bible, from the good book, from the Word. As a matter of fact, some of the songs are literally right out of the Bible. It's scripture put to music. So that's really important, for us, and always has been. That's our calling, and that's what we're here and what we feel led to do. In terms of music, I don't listen to a lot of music. I'm going to be honest. I mean, I love a lot of artists. I'll hear a song and I'll say, oh, wow, I like that. Or that's really good. I just like a good song, whether it's John Legend or Adele or Judas Priest, or, if I hear something that makes my ears perk up, I'm there. I'm gonna be able to enjoy it and tap my foot and get into it, and maybe even purchase it. I'll be honest, I haven't purchased a lot of music, download or streaming or actual physical copies, because I've been so busy. I know that sounds like a cop-out, but it's true. I'm busy doing music on my own all the time.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I've heard other artists, a totally different genre, of course. But I remember Prince saying that he didn't listen to a lot of music because if he wanted to hear a song, he would just write a song,
Yeah, I certainly don't, nor have I ever listened to music to guide me or to help me as a writer or to write a song. Never in my life. I draw, from my own personal stories or what I've experienced in life, or from the Word of God, or from love for my family, my wife, my children. You know what I mean? That's where my inspiration comes from, not from other artists or other music per se.
So Scott and I embrace the idea that while we live in a contentious time, we are not as far apart as politically or socially as the media or social media makes us believe. This makes me think about the song on your new album, Make Love Great Again. Tell us a little bit about this song.
Yeah, gosh, that song is just about, literally putting love first. Everybody knows the President Trump, slogan, expression, make America great again. And I think America is great in many ways, and always has been and always will be. we can always improve upon the system, no doubt. But the way we make anything great again is through love. So you're not going to make America great again unless love is great again. It starts there. And I was just flipping through, the channels this morning, the news. I sit and have a cup of coffee and I watch the news for half an hour. That's it. Mm-hmm. Not every day, but every other day or so what, or so on. And what I do is I'll watch CNN for 10 minutes, then I'll watch Fox for 10 minutes just for fun, just to get the extreme polar opposite opinions. Yeah. And it's really pretty hilarious sometimes because it really is so biased. But on CNN, I was watching the commentator, newsman get so heated asking someone of the opposite party about questions he wanted the answers to. And that's the problem is people take it so serious and it's so deep that it literally turns them into complete raging lunatics. They become so crazy. You could see his eyes popping out of his head and almost foaming at the mouth. He was getting so angry. And it's like, that's the problem. I don't think there's anything wrong with having different parties and different opinions. That's perfectly natural. Mm-hmm. But man, it's the way we disagree with those opinions that's really disheartening. It's terrible.
Right. And if you disagree, you're evil, maybe,
right.
Which is not really the case. Gosh. And like Steve said, you get people together in a room and talk. Generally, you're not that far apart, but goodness, from watching the media.
I mean, if you say you vote, you support Trump, you're stupid.
Right.
If you say you support Biden, you're a socialist. You're something. You're going to be called some derogatory name for supporting anyone. And it's just ridiculous, man. It irks me. It irks me so much so. And it's probably something that's never going to change in the free world. I think it's always going to be that way. It does seem a little worse over the past few years for sure. And people blame that on Trump. I don't blame it on Trump at all.
Twitter and Instagram, which by the way, anyone listening can see us at Speaksies on Twitter and Instagram, but we only have positive posts.
You're right. You hit the nail on the head right there. It's primarily due to social media. I mean, that really fuels the fire. But, look at the person in the mirror. What are you doing to make this place, this world, this country better?
We started with bandanas. That's step one on our campaign. We'll let you know how that goes.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
So, you have been making music with the same group of guys for almost 40 years now. So what is it like working with the same group of people, including your older brother, for so long?
Well, it's got its moments, really incredible, awesome moments, and then moments that you wish never happened. I guess it's very similar. Being in a band is very similar to being married. You're going to have those great times, and then you're going to have some bad times. Mm-hmm. You're going to have a smooth road, and then you're going to have a bumpy road at times. And it's the same way being in a band. But I think having been together for almost 40 years, we've figured out a way to make it work, and we're willing to work on it if we have a problem. Not just say, "Oh well, hey, that's it. Let's quit." I think we've figured out a way to make it work, and we enjoy what we do, and we enjoy each other still, so it works.
What is a misconception that people might have about you that you would like to address?
Oh, man. Well, I think many times people put us on a pedestal, or they expect us to be on a pedestal, to be perfect. And I think that's the biggest thing that I notice is when they see that we're not, or in their eyes that we're not. Mm-hmm. Like if I'm having dinner with my family and I'm sitting there having a glass of bourbon, and I'm in a private restaurant having a private dinner with my family, and someone comes up to me and gives me the deer in the headlights look, mm-hmm. because I'm drinking a bourbon, and it literally sometimes ask me like, wow, I had no idea you drank. I'm a little let down, a little bummed out. I mean,
Right.
I've had many things like that said to me. That's something that happens often. And I just think that it's important for us to always remember that, men are not perfect. Men are always going to fail you. And that's why it's important for us not to focus on men and put our trust in men, but to focus on God and put our trust in God.
This is very important to me because I imagine you still drive around in this every day. So, gently give me this answer. Whatever happened to the van from the Soldiers Under Command album?
You know what? I don't know, and I could care less.
You just broke Steve's
Yeah, that
heart.
wasn't a very gentle letdown.
Well, I mean, I'll be honest. That van, we had some good times in the van, but they were short-lived. That van was given to Robert by Darren Hinton, who is a dear friend of ours, a woman that invested money into the band early on and really helped us succeed and break and make it and allowed me to be talking with you today. And we bought new gear and outfits and made our first album, paid for that. But she also gave us a few other things along the way. She gave me a car, convertible Cougar XR7, 1973. And other than the cockroaches that were in the car when it came from Hawaii, that was an awesome car, And that's a true story. We can talk about that another time, but it was infested with cockroaches. My brother got the van, which was in a movie that Darren's brother Darby was in.
Okay.
I forget the name of the movie. And
was it Malibu Express?
It might have been something like that.
How do you know that?
That's a subject for another day too. Okay.
Yeah, and Robert got the van, and knowing Robert as we all do, Robert loved the van. Any one of us, the other guys, myself, Oz, or Tim, probably would have said, "You got anything else?" I'll take that instead. Robert's like, "Wow, I love this." And Robert actually painted it, had it painted, and drove that thing around, and it had a 50 caliber machine gun on the top, and the back gate would. You could lift and raise and lower the back gate. And we would go to the market and come walking out of the back gate of that thing with the 50 caliber on the top.
I would love to see that. Go back in time.
Yeah, and nobody would even look twice at us. Now we'd be arrested and sent to prison,
Yeah.
It was the 80s. You expected a yellow and black van going down the street. So I think I asked the wrong brother. So in my mind, next time Robert has to go to the store to get milk, that he's walking to it. And getting in that car.
Robert would say, "Oh my God, I miss that van so much," something like that.
I think that's why when Steve asked you about it, you're like, "Dude, I don't care, man. That's not my thing." Yeah, that's funny.
No, it's an iconic van. I tell you, man. People ask about it all the time, and so much so. This is why we decided to, kidding aside. We decided to make a limited run of a toy van, replica of that van. That's going to be available soon in a limited edition. So, if you really want that van, you want to own that van, man, you want to get one of your limited edition runs of it coming soon.
My wife will appreciate the discussion that we'll have after this for Christmas.
Steve just got the first item on his Christmas list this year.
So,
nice.
Michael, again, thank you very much for joining us. My last question is, what is next for you and Stryper?
Next for me and or Stryper, I'll tell you a lot. Basically, I am wrapping up literally today and tomorrow. Tomorrow I'm done with the Sunbomb vocals, which is an album Tracy Guns and I did together.
Okay.
I don't know when that's coming out, but it's getting turned in soon. Kind of a Sabbathy doom metal with positive lyrics, that kind of thing. And then I'm going to start on the Reborn project. I'm going to add some guitars and vocals to my original version of Reborn. I thought it would be really interesting, not to disrespect Stryper at all. Some people took it that way, to release my version of it because it was originally a solo album. And I thought it'd be cool to release that and just show people it's very similar. There's no difference really with it than the Stryper album, other than maybe the feel of it, different players. But I want to release that. That's going to happen. And then I start on a new project next year with Joel Hoekstra and Nathan James. And then I do a solo album right after that in February. And then Stryper's going to be touring supposedly next year. I'm doing a new Sweet and Lynch album. And then we're going to start on a new Stryper album at the end of the year.
Oh, man.
Wow. You are staying busy. That's awesome.
You wouldn't have time to even be in the van to go get milk. So,
dude,
that's right.
I tell you, it's crazy. I look at my life and I think, you know, I see a lot of my friends going and getting day jobs, and, you know, life has changed for everyone, obviously. So far, I'm very blessed to not have to do that yet. And, you know, I have all these opportunities. I'm very thankful for them. So I'm going to keep walking through those doors and doing what I do.
Oh, when you have a voice like Michael Sweet, please keep doing what you're doing.
Well, if I do have to get a day job, I'm sure I'll be singing all day working, and then I'll get fired, you know?
Yeah, right.
We'll test the PA system before you get out there. Make sure
right.
you don't hit a high note. Cool. I think that's all we have.
Yeah.
Michael, thank you very much for joining us. We really appreciate it.
Thanks,
Guys,
Michael.
you're awesome. Thank you so much. You guys, I wish you nothing but the best. Stay safe out there, and God bless you.
God bless you. Thanks, sir.
Thanks.
Take care, guys.
So that was our interview with Michael Sweet. Always worried when you're going to meet people that you looked up to, and you know that something's going to go wrong and he's going to have a bad day. But it was a great interview, great time talking to him. And if you're interested to know why I was able to shout out Malibu Express when he referenced Darby Hinton, which I don't think anyone expected to come up on the conversation. Please listen to our post-game show on Patreon.
That's right. Well, listen, this has been a fantastic show.
Wait a minute.
What the?
Oh, not again this year.
No.
I thought we got away from it. Boo. 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 Beauregard, this isn't the Magnolia Festival. Boo. Boo. And why is that guy wearing a bandana? Boo. Boo. Thank you for listening to Origin of Speakses. Bob's your uncle, and watch out for bears. War Eagle.
Speaksies.